A lot of people seem to be really concerned about oil leaking out of their exhaust. You should be a little bit, but not super worried about it. If it is leaking, the first thing you want to do is replace the two O-rings that go inside the header right here. Make sure you get the right size for your quad, and some exhausts probably have a specific O-ring that goes in there. So make sure that you have that O-ring replaced. If it's still leaking, then you can use some copper RTV. Put a little bit of that around, put a new O-ring in, and then put a little bit of that copper RTV around that O-ring, and then reinstall it. And it should fix the problem. If it doesn't, use more RTV. You don't want to use so much that it sucks it back into the engine, but you want to use enough to make sure that it seals. And there should be plenty of sealing area there. So once you get that fixed, if it's leaking from up here, what I did was I just threw a zip tie on there and pulled it really tight. And that solved my leaking problem there. There are some really expensive, nice exhaust clamps that you can buy that are chrome and use Allen keys and O-rings and rubber and all that stuff to seal it, which work great, I'm sure, but I just don't want to spend the money on those. I'd rather spend the money on performance parts. So oil leaks from there, replace that seal. It's that simple. As for oil out of the silencers, that's going to happen. It's a two-stroke machine, so the oil's got to come out somewhere. So if it drips down here or leaks out a little bit around the edge there, no big deal. That's what it's going to do. It's a two-stroke machine. It burns oil. It's going to have nasty, smelly exhaust. Another thing is that people want to know, why does one exhaust side smoke more than the other? Well, there can be a few causes from that. The first thing I do to fix that problem is look for exhaust leaks. If you have an exhaust leak on one side, then the exhaust is probably sneaking out somewhere, and you're actually getting the same amount out of both cylinders. It's just one's not coming out of the silencer because it's leaking somewhere in front of the silencer. So the first thing you want to do is check to make sure that you have no exhaust leaks on that side. Another possibility is if you have a misfire on one cylinder. The easy way to check that is if you notice one side smoking more, switch the coil. So put the left coil on the right side, the right coil on the left side, and also put in new plugs. If the opposite side smokes more, then you know that you have a misfire on the one side. So if you figure out it's not a misfire problem, it's the same side smoking, there might be a possibility that one exhaust pipe was just dirtier than the other. You might have had a misfire at one point, and it just got overlooked or whatever, and you switched out plugs and never realized it, and then it built up oil and stuff in the exhaust. So that's another possibility. You're never going to get them perfect. One's always going to smoke a little bit more than the other, and it probably will go back and forth. You just don't realize it. Another thing you want to check is make sure compression's the same and engine leaks on each side. Make sure the compression's about the same, within 10% of the opposite cylinder. So it's really not a big deal as long as you make sure that there's no leaks. If it smokes more, no big deal. If your exhaust is stuffed up with something, like if it's sat all winter, it's a possibility a mouse made a nest in there or something like that. So that's a possibility as well. So you could, possibility you could use to fix that is get like a coat hanger or something, and take your silencers off, and then run a coat hanger down inside your headers and then inside your silencers from the opposite end, and see if you can pull anything out of it. Highly unlikely scenario, but I've heard of it happening, so that's another thing you might want to look into. So as for exhaust leaks, air-wise, you need to fix it. As for extra oil coming out of one pipe or the other, it's not really a big concern as long as there's no leaks. So hope this vid helped.